A strong earthquake with its epicenter in northern Afghanistan has shaken buildings from Kabul to New Delhi, killing at least 338 people and injuring 1,250 more. The U.S. Geological Survey says the magnitude was 7.5. That's a powerful tremor. Around the world, only about 20 quakes a year measure higher than 7. Well, a TV station in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, was broadcasting at the moment that the quake hit.
میلرزوند و هنوز خسارات این زلزله مشخص نیست.
Well, the epicenter was in a remote area of Afghanistan in the Hindu Kush mountain range in the far northern province of Badakhshan, which borders Tajikistan and China. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, it was south of the city of Faizabad at a depth of 213 kilometers. That's much deeper than other recent major earthquakes, which have caused widespread devastation. Well, tremors were also felt in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, as well as Islamabad in neighboring Pakistan, and further away in New Delhi. We have correspondents in all of those locations. Let's begin with Jennifer Glass, who was in Kabul when the earthquake hit.
The dead and the wounded here in Afghanistan are in 11 of the country's 34 provinces, really an indicator of how widespread this earthquake was felt. We felt it here in Kabul. We are 260 kilometers away from the epicenter, which was northeast in the northeast of the country, deep under the Hindu Kush mountain range. The injured are in the north, in the east, in central Afghanistan, again across nearly a third of the country. A very tragic story of 12 schoolgirls who died because of a stampede at their school in northern Afghanistan in Takhar province. The girls panicked when this earthquake happened. It was in a very long duration. It took about a minute. The girls panicked and were trampled to death in that very tragic incident. It is the biggest earthquake that has been felt in decades here, and here in the capital, certainly many people went out onto the streets trying to get away from buildings, worried that they might be hurt. And then we do know that the casualty level is quite high here. Casualties are around the country. Even worse in neighboring Pakistan. One of the big concerns is some of the villages that might have been affected are in very remote areas, difficult to get to on the best of days, but in this situation even harder. So Afghan officials are working to get to any affected community. The chief executive officer of Afghanistan, Abdullah, called an emergency meeting. He asked health officials, doctors, nurses, any kind of health support to go to clinics and hospitals to help those who have been wounded. And he also called on Afghan businessmen and non-governmental agencies here in Afghanistan and around the world to offer what help, what support they can to Afghanistan, to this region devastated by this very, very large earthquake.
Well, that report from Afghanistan, but the effects of the quake were also felt in neighboring countries. So let's go to Pakistan. Al Jazeera's Caroline Malone reports on the impact there.
Buildings in Peshawar were hit with the force of a strong quake, even though the epicenter was hundreds of kilometers away. There's structural damage, including to the city's historic fort. Video caught the moment the quake hit Rawalpindi. People watched anxiously as a road shook overhead. Many injured were brought to this Rawalpindi hospital. And in the capital Islamabad, people evacuated from buildings fearing the effects of aftershocks.
It was a severe earthquake. We told the students to rush out, and they all started going out. We rushed down amid the shouting and screaming. It lasted for around a minute or more. There were extremely severe shocks. After 5 minutes, when we went up, the building had suffered severe damage. There are cracks in the walls.
People also felt the effects in Indian-controlled Kashmir, where 500-year-old structures were badly damaged.
A wall in the famous Bhimgarh fort has been totally damaged in the earthquake.
Parts of the metro train line were temporarily halted in the capital, Delhi. It's a seismically active region. 10 years ago, a similar strength earthquake hit northern Pakistan. 75,000 people died then. This time, the quake was deeper, 200 kilometers down. But even so, the damage is clear above ground. Caroline Malone, Al Jazeera.
Well, Al Jazeera's Kamal Haider has just arrived in Mingora in Pakistan's Swat Valley. He sent us this update.
Well, according to the Provincial Disaster Management Authority, the worst hit is the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, and we are here in Mingora, Swat. We are told that Malakand and Swat have suffered the maximum number of casualties, almost 187. The death toll now mounting over 250, and there are reports that at least 800 houses have been damaged or destroyed here in Malakand and Swat alone. That number is over 1,100 across a vast region, because this powerful earthquake not just shook Islamabad, but as far as New Delhi and the provincial capital of the Punjab. But the worst hit, according to the provincial authorities, is here in Swat and Malakand, which is just an adjoining district.
Well, the earthquake was also felt as far away as India. Al Jazeera's Nidhi Dutt is in New Delhi for us.
Tremors felt for about 40 seconds in the Indian capital, New Delhi, when an earthquake hit the Afghanistan-Pakistan border on Monday afternoon. Panic across the northern belt of India in states like Haryana and Punjab, as well as particularly Indian-administered Kashmir. Now, we've heard of, in the early stages of this unfolding story, suggestions that power lines were down, as well as telecom problems in Srinagar, the capital of Indian-administered Kashmir. However, there are no reports as yet of loss of life or widespread damage to property. The Indian government, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, coming out and saying that the Indian government is looking to assess the situation and has offered support to neighbouring Afghanistan and Pakistan, perhaps highlighting the regional threat that these kinds of natural disasters pose, and the kind of fear that spreads across the region, even as far away as New Delhi, where we are. Quite a lot of panic and concern here in India.
The view from India there. Well, Professor Peter Salmons is a geophysics expert from University College London, and he joins me now in the studio. Sir, thank you so much for joining us here on Al Jazeera. So we know it was 7.5 magnitude. We're told it was at a depth of 213 kilometers. What does that actually mean? Put it in context for us.
Well, in terms of the shaking you feel on the surface, I mean, the shaking is going to be very much less for such a high magnitude earthquake, because it is so deep. But on the other hand, that shaking is going to be spread out over a far larger area, and that's what's been seen, felt right across Afghanistan, Pakistan, and so on.
I mean, so far we're hearing of 338 confirmed dead. Obviously, it's nighttime now. Unfortunately, I'm guessing the death toll will rise when the morning light comes. But judging by the magnitude of the earthquake, would you say that this would be something where we'd see hundreds or thousands of dead?
It's probably going to be hundreds. I mean, obviously that's unfortunate, but I mean, say that the shaking is not so bad. But I mean, there will be triggered landslides in remote areas, and it will take time to establish links with those communities to see whether they have been struck or not.
We were seeing with all our correspondents that basically it's obviously epicenter in Afghanistan, and repercussions felt in Pakistan and as far as India as well. How much research has been done in this particular area? Because of course the question is, after earthquakes happen, is could this have been predicted, or is there any way of predicting it? How much do we know about this particular area compared to, I don't know, for example, Japan and that massive land?
Well, the tectonics are very complicated, and they're not understood, and there's not nearly enough research, say, compared to Japan or the United States. So, this is an area which really is crying out for more understanding.
And so is it because there's a lack of finance from these countries? Obviously, Afghanistan has other issues as we often talk about at Al Jazeera. Or is it a lack of will, a lack of coordination between the countries? What is it that's stopping the research from happening? Well,
I think all countries are quite different in that region, and some have been quite open to research. Others, there are security issues, and other countries there are access issues. So it's a whole combination, and not every country is different. I mean, what really needs to happen, obviously, is a far more coordinated research effort.
And assuming that there was a more coordinated research effort, what kinds of things would you be looking at, and how do you think that might help at least predicting some of these earthquakes?
Well, first of all, you want to try and find out, where the big faults are, and the likelihood they might move, and that's really what it is about. And then informing people, of the potential hazard in their backyard.
And from what we know of previous earthquakes, how susceptible is this area to earthquakes, and how damaging have they been?
Well, it's highly seismically active, and in the historic past, they've been highly damaging. I mean, you don't have to go back very far to find severe casualty numbers. Yes.
And so when you first heard of this, I mean, we now know the magnitude, and is it safe now, or do you think there is a likelihood of aftershocks or potentially another big quake?
Well, I mean,
or is it just impossible to know?
No, there's a very similar earthquake in the area in 2002. So I mean, within the next decade or so, you'd expect another earthquake of this type. So I mean, these are going to keep on occurring.
Is this one of the worst areas then for earthquakes as well? Because, I mean, we're just mentioning not enough research has been done. Are there groups perhaps in the UK that are trying to research the area to at least predict when this might happen again?
There is actually quite a big UK programme called Earthquakes Without Frontiers, which is researching the whole of Central Asia. And so, but it's a very large area, and there are very many active faults which nothing is known about.
Okay. Professor Peter Salmons, Professor of Geophysics at University College London, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.